Hello my dear students, welcome back to Nibras online class. We were discussing the lesson, the snake and the mirror, weren't we? Have you read the paragraphs that we have completed in the last class? Okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions from the paragraphs that we completed in the last class and try to answer all that questions that I'm going to ask. Okay, but there is a condition. Pause the video after you hear the question. Then try to answer that question yourself. Then check the answer with the answer I'm going to show in the screen. Okay. So here is your first question. What was the topic that came up for discussion between the doctor and his friends? What was the topic that came up for discussion between the doctor and his friends? What was that topic? Yes, the topic of their discussion was a snake. The topic of their discussion was a snake. They were discussing about the snake, and the homeopath asked a question. Has a snake ever coiled itself around any part of your body? And from that question, the lesson Snake and the Mirror starts. Okay. My second question is, the sound was a familiar one. What was the sound? The sound was a familiar one. What was the sound? Yes, the sound created by the rats. That was the familiar sound the homeopath mentioned in the paragraph, and he also said that one could say homeopath and the rats were sharing the room. Okay, my third question. How do you understand that the doctor was in a poor financial condition? How can we say the doctor was in a poor financial condition? Yes, he had just started his medical practice, and his earnings or his possession, he had only 60 rupees, and his earnings were meager. He had only 60 rupees in his suitcase, and from that sentences we can conclude his financial condition was very poor. Okay, have you answered all these questions? Very good. My last question. What was there on his table? What was there, or what were there on his table? There were a lamp, a large mirror, and a small comb. That is what we could see on the table of homeopaths. Okay. Next question. In those days, I was a great admirer of beauty. Pick out the phrases and expressions from the story to justify this statement. The statement, I was a great admirer of beauty. Can you identify some statements from the story The Snake and the Mirror to prove it? Yes, here is the answer. He looked into the mirror and picked up the comb and ran it through his hair. This is the statement, and to prove he was an admirer of beauty. My next question. What was the important decision of homeopaths? And when he was looking into the mirror, he had taken three important decisions. I think you remember that. And what was the important decision of homeopaths? Yes, he would shave daily and grow a thin moustache to look more handsome, was the important decision of homeopaths. Okay, my next question. What was the earth-shaking decision of homeopaths? What was the earth-shaking decision of homeopaths? What was the earth-shaking? What do you mean by earth-shaking? Earth-shaking means important, very important. What was the earth-shaking decision? Yes, he would always keep that attractive smile on his face to look more handsome. Okay. Next question. What was the lovely thought of homeopaths? What was the lovely thought of homeopaths? What was the lovely thought? Yes, he would marry. He would get married to a woman doctor who had plenty of money and a good medical practice. That was the lovely thought of homeopaths. Don't you remember it? Yes. Okay. Then, what kind of woman does the doctor want to marry? Why? What kind of woman does the doctor want to marry? A thin woman? Or a fat woman? Or a short woman? Yes. He wants to marry a fat woman. Because if he made a silly mistake and needed to run away from her, she should not be able to chase and catch him. That's why he decided to marry a fat woman. Okay? Next question. What happened when the doctor was sitting on his chair? What happened when the doctor was sitting on his chair? Yes, he heard a dull thud as if a rubber tube had fallen to the ground, but he didn't take it as serious. After a while, a fat snake wriggled over the back of the chair and landed on his shoulder. His turning and the snake's landing were simultaneous. He heard a noise from the back of the chair, but he neglected it. He didn't give any importance to that sound because the sound was very familiar to him because he thought that it may be the sound of the rat. But suddenly a snake wriggled over the back of the chair and landed on his shoulder, and his turning and the landing were simultaneous. This is what we discussed, we learned from the last class. I hope you have all read the paragraphs more than one time, haven't you? Let's continue the rest of the story, The Snake and the Mirror, written by Vaikom Muhammad Bashir. Are you ready to know what happened, what may happen to the homeopath and the snake? Okay, let's continue. You can hear the audio of the text on the screen. Please listen that audio very carefully along with you have to look at your textbook, or you can see the text on the screen. Okay. Please ensure you all have written, or you have noted the unfamiliar words, and please try to underline those unfamiliar words in your notebook. And later you have to find the meanings of that unfamiliar words either from the glossary or any dictionary. Okay? Are you ready to listen the story carefully? Let's continue. Okay, here you are.
I didn't jump, I didn't tremble, I didn't cry out. There was no time to do any such a thing. The snake slithered along my shoulder and coiled around my left arm above the elbow. The hood was spread out and its head was hardly 3 or 4 inches from my face. It would not be correct to say merely that I sat there holding my breath. I was turned to stone. But my mind was very active. The door opened into darkness. The room was filled with darkness. In the light of the lamp, I sat there like a stone image in the flesh. I felt then the great presence of the creator of this world and this universe. God was there. Suppose I said something and he did not like it. I tried in my imagination to write in bright letters outside my little arch the words, "Oh God." There was some pain in my left arm. It was as if a thick leaden rod, a rod made of molten fire, was slowly but powerfully crushing my arm. The arm was beginning to be drained of all strength. What could I do? At my slightest movement, the snake would strike me. Death lurked 4 inches away. Suppose it struck, what was the medicine I had to take? There were no medicine in the room. I was but a poor, foolish and stupid doctor. I forgot my danger and smiled feebly at myself. It seemed as if God appreciated that. The snake turned its head, it looked into the mirror and saw its reflection. I do not claim that it was the first snake that had ever looked into a mirror, but it was certain that the snake was looking into the mirror. Was it admiring its own beauty? Was it trying to make an important decision about growing a moustache or using eyeshadow and mascara or wearing a vermilion spot on his forehead? I did not know anything for certain. What sex was the snake? Was it male or female? I will never know. For the snake unwound itself from my arm and slowly slithered into my lap. From there, it crept into the table and moved towards the mirror. Perhaps it wanted to enjoy its reflection at closer quarters. I was no mere image cut in granite. I was certainly a man of flesh and blood. Still holding my breath, I got up from the chair. I quietly went out through the door into the veranda. From there, I leapt into the yard and ran for all I was worth. Whew! Each of us heaved a sigh of relief. All of us lit beadies. Somebody asked, "Doctor, is your wife very fat?" "No," the doctor said. "God willed otherwise. My life companion is a thin, ready person with the gift of a sprinter." Someone else asked, "Doctor, when you ran, did the snake follow you?" The doctor replied, "I ran and ran till I reached a friend's house. Immediately, I smeared oil all over myself and took a bath. I changed into fresh clothes. The next morning at about 8:30, I took my friend and one or two others to my room to move my things from there. But we found we had little to carry. Some thief had removed most of my things. The room had been cleaned out. But not really. The thief had left behind one thing as a final insult." "What was that?" I asked. The doctor said, "My vest, the dirty one. The fellow had such a sense of cleanliness. The rascal could have taken it and used it after washing it with a soap and water." "Did you see the snake the next day, doctor?" The doctor laughed. "I have never seen it since. It was a snake which was taken with its own beauty."
I hope all of you have listened to this story very carefully, haven't you? Do you understand what Homeopath is talking in those paragraphs? Okay, let me ask you a few questions from the paragraph that we have completed to check whether you have understood or not. Are you ready to answer those questions? Okay, here is your first question. My first question: how did the doctor react when the snake landed on him? How did the homeopath react when the snake landed on him? How did he react? Yes, he didn't jump, he didn't tremble, and he didn't cry out. He sat still. He sat still. What will you do if a snake landed on your shoulder or on any part of your body? What will you do? You may shake suddenly. Then the snake strike you. But here the homeopath sat still without any movement. He didn't jump, he didn't tremble, he didn't cry out. He sat still like a stone. Okay? Okay. My second question. Why did the doctor sit in the chair like a stone image in the flesh? Why did he sat like a stone image in the flesh? Why did he sat like that? Yes, because if he moved, it would strike him. If homeopath moved, the snake would strike him. So he sat there like a stone image in flesh. Okay, so that is what you have also to do when a snake landed on you. Okay? Okay. Okay. My next question is, why did the doctor think that death lurked 4 inches away from him? Why did the doctor think that death lurked 4 inches away from him? Why did he thought like that? Why did he think like that? Yes, the snake stayed only 4 inches away from his head. Only 4 away from his head. And if he moved, it would bite him. Okay, that's why he thought death lurked 4 inches away from him. There is no any distance, more distance from his head and the hood of the snake. The snake stayed only 4 inches away from his head, and if he moved, it would bite him, and that's why he thought death lurked 4 inches away from him. Oh, my next question. What were the funny thoughts came into the doctor's mind when the snake looked into the mirror? In his mind there were a lot of funny thoughts about the snake when the snake looked into the mirror. What was that funny thoughts? What were they? Yes, the funny thoughts came into his mind were whether the snake was admiring its own beauty, whether it was taking a decision about growing a mustache, using eyeshadow and mascara, or wearing a vermilion spot on his forehead. This is what the funny thoughts. These were the funny thoughts came to the mind of Homeopath. Just like when he looked into the mirror before the landing of the snake, he had also thought like this about to grow a mustache and to keep that attractive smile on his face, and also he would marry a fat lady. That were the thoughts of Homeopath before the snake incident. And when the snake looked into the mirror, some funny thoughts came to the mind of the Homeopath. That were, the snake was thinking about to grow a mustache or put mascara or eyeshadow or vermilion spot on his forehead. That were the funny thoughts of the Homeopath when the snake looked into the mirror. Okay? Then, next question. Why did the doctor feel that he was a stupid doctor? Why did he feel he was a stupid doctor? Yes, he felt so because he didn't have any medicine in his room, though he was a doctor. And if the snake had struck him, what medicine he would have taken? That thought made him feel that he was a stupid doctor. There were no any medicine to use as a first aid, though he was a doctor. That's why he thought he was a stupid doctor. My next question. I was suddenly a man of flesh and blood. What does the doctor mean by this statement? What does he mean by this statement? I was suddenly a man of flesh and blood. Yes. When the snake left him and moved towards the mirror, he got a chance to escape. He became active and to make use of the opportunity and decided to run out of the room. That means when the snake moved towards the mirror, he got a chance to escape. That he used appropriately. That is what he says in that statement. Already he said that he sat there like a stone image in the flesh. That means without any movement, like a stone. But when the snake moved towards the mirror, he became very active and he used that opportunity very wisely. That is what he said in this statement. Okay. My next question. What did the Homeopath see when he came back home next day? What did he see when he came back the home next day? Next day means after the snake unwound from his body, he escaped to the friend's house and he smeared oil all over his body and took a bath and changed into fresh clothes. That is what happened, right? Okay, then in the next morning he came back to the room. Then what did he see there? What did he see? What did the homeopath see when he came back home next day? Yes, some thief had removed most of his things from that room. Some thief had removed most of his things from that room. That is what he seen in the room when he came back to room the next day. So a robbery had took place. Okay, my next question. The thief had left behind one thing as a final insult. What was the insult? The thief had left behind one thing as a final insult. What was that final insult? Yes, the dirty vest. The thief had not taken the doctor's one dirty vest. That was the final insult. Most of the things had removed by the thieves. Right? Everything had been cleared out. But the thief had left that vest there. And the homeopath said that he could have taken it and washed it and used it again. But the thief had left behind the vest as the final insult to homeopaths. Okay. My last question from the portion is, according to the doctor, what type of a snake was it? According to the doctor, what type of a snake was it? What type of a snake was it? Yes, in the last paragraph you can see two sentences. What is that? It was a snake which was taken its own beauty. It was a snake which was taken its own beauty by looking at the mirror. This is what we learned from the paragraphs that we taken today. Right? I hope all of you have understood the story, the snake and the mirror completely. So, by 3 videos, we have completed the story, the snake and the mirror. I hope all of you have understood what is the story about. And I would like to give you a short summary about what we learned today. So today we learned that when the snake slithered over the back of the chair and landed on his shoulder, the homeopath didn't do anything. He didn't jump, he didn't tremble, and he didn't cry out. He sat still without do anything. And so he sat there like a stone image in a flesh. At that moment he realized the presence of God. He realized the presence of God, and the homeopath said that maybe the God did not like what he said before. Then he felt the great presence of the God. Up to that moment he did not think about the presence of God, but when the snake landed on his shoulder, he started to think about the presence of God, and he said maybe the God did not like what he said before. That's why he wrote, "Oh God," in the heart in bright letters. If he say anything that may not like by whom? By the God. Then he realized that the death lurked just 4 inches away from his head. The gap between his head and the hood of the snake only hardly 4 inches. Then when the snake looked into the mirror, some funny thoughts came to the mind of the homeopath. What were they? They were, if the snake think about to put the vermilion spot on his forehead or using the mascara or eyeshadow, just like that funny thoughts came to the mind of the homeopath. But when the snake moved towards the mirror, he got a chance to escape. Homeopath used that opportunity very wisely, and he went out to the room and reached at the house of one of his friends. Immediately he smeared oil all over his body and took a bath. That is what happened in that night. In the next morning, he came back home again to remove all the things from that room, but he realized that some thief had removed all of his things. And there was a comedy. There is a comedy in that paragraph. What was that? Yes, when he concluded the story, when the homeopath stopped his story, one of his friends asked him that if his wife was fat. What was the reply of homeopath? The homeopath replied that God willed otherwise, and his life companion was a thin, ready person with the gift of a sprinter. What do you mean by sprinter? Yes, athlete. That means if the homeopath made any silly mistake and he needed to run away, the wife can easily catch whom? The homeopath. But what was the wish of homeopath? He would like to marry a fat woman. What was the reason? Yes, if he made any silly mistake and needed to run away, she should not be able to catch him. That's what the wish of homeopath. But God willed otherwise. The God gave him a thin, ready person with the gift of a sprinter. Okay, so that is what the message of this short story, The Snake and the Mirror. And I will give you that message in the end. Then, when he reached back at the home in the next morning, he realized that some thief had removed most of his things from that house. And there is a final insult. What was that final insult? Yes, the thief had left behind his vest, the dirty vest inside the house as a final insult. That was the final insult. That is the dirty vest. So the message of the short story, The Snake and the Mirror, is one should not be proud of oneself. And without the God's support, we are nothing. Is the message of the story, The Snake and the Mirror. Here we can see the homeopath was very too proud of himself. He always used to say, I was a bachelor and a doctor, something like that. He was too proud of himself. But at the moment when the snake wriggled over the back of the chair and landed on his shoulder, he had nothing to do. He even keep any medicine in the house. That's why he says, I was a stupid, foolish doctor. Poor, stupid, foolish doctor. He realized the reality. Up to that moment, he was too proud of himself, but God gave him a chance to understand. In front of the God, we are nothing. That is what the message of the story, The Snake and the Mirror, and I hope you all have understood the story, The Snake and the Mirror, clearly. And let me conclude here. We will meet with another video. Thank you.